And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you. Aquaba. Welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta Report here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. My name is Keedy Owado, aka the Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East African time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Tuesday, the 15th day of July, 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. Here's what we have on the table for you today. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Today on LIB Radio, this topic is Saudi Arabia begins the unthinkable, dropping the petrodollar. Today on LIB Radio, you may have noticed a lot about Saudi Arabia in the news in recent days. CBS News is now openly connecting the House of Saud to the events surrounding 9/11, with solid hints of a Saudi connection. Could all this be tied to the recent decision by the former American strategic ally to dump the petrodollar and begin trading its oil in a myriad of, quote, local currencies, including the Chinese yuan and Bitcoin? We need to unravel this story and ask how deeply this will affect the economy. So that is today's topic. I hope you are interested in it. Saudi ends its 53 or more year, I have to double check, 50-year agreement to trade its oil in the US dollar. Saudi Arabia's decision to end its long-standing petrodollar agreement with the United States marks a significant shift in global economic dynamics. Although the immediate impact on the US dollar's dominance remains uncertain. The move, which allows Saudi Arabia to sell oil in multiple currencies, including the Chinese yuan and euros, signals a broader trend toward de-dollarization. However, experts suggest that the US dollar's role as the global reserve currency is unlikely to collapse overnight, as the markets have not shown significant reaction to the change. Now, you may have heard the news stories for the last 2 days of Donald Trump stating that any nation which is going with BRICS and excluding the United States from trade, well, the nations that will be trading with BRICS, Donald Trump said they will be 100% tariff on imports from those nations. And I think he did say it was due to the de-dollarization move. So is it possible the United States could 100% tariffs on Saudi or Arabian oil coming into the United States? Little do we know that United States is actually exporting more oil than Saudi Arabia. America is currently producing more oil than Saudi Arabia, although the American oil is finite. Let's go through these various points that I pulled up here. Point number one, Saudi Arabia's petrodollar exit. Saudi Arabia has ended its 50-year agreement with the U.S. to sell oil exclusively in dollars, allowing sales in multiple currencies, including the Chinese yuan and euros. This decision is seen as a step toward reducing reliance on U.S. dollar in global trade. Point two, the impact on the U.S. dollar. While some analysts argue that the move could weaken U.S. dollar's global dominance, others suggest that the dollar's status as the primary reserve currency remains strong due to its liquidity and the U.S. economy's size. Point number three, the global economic implications. The shift could accelerate the use of alternative currencies in international trade, but the full effects are yet to be seen. Saudi Arabia's involvement in projects like mBridge, a digital currency platform, may further influence cross-border transactions. Now, this could get real serious, and this could be behind much of this stress and tension we're seeing across the U.S. economy right now. I am definitely feeling it, and I bet you are feeling it too. I think it will have long-term implications, not just for the U.S., but for the entire planet. And you and I had better figure it out soon. We're going to have to think about this and figure it out soon. Perhaps we should be calling conferences in every city. We should be confabbing, put our best minds on it, and ask, how does this affect us? Let's keep going. Right now, I'm going to share a short video that I have up on the screen, and I'm going to put this video on the screen. It doesn't last more than, I think it's about 2 minutes and 20 seconds long or so. Let's go ahead, play this video. This video is entitled, I can't
You
think of what
keep
it's
hearing
entitled.
America first. But what if it's really Riyadh first?
Bear with me
You
here.
keep
Let's get
hearing
it right.
America first. But what if it's really Riyadh first? We bend over backward for Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they agreed to price oil in US dollars. That one deal props up the entire US dollar. No petrodollar, no empire, no cheap borrowing. That's the real power move. So while MAGA says freedom, the dollar's tied to oil kings who don't share your values, but control your currency. If your economy needs Saudi permission slips, how free are you, really? You keep hearing America
I'm going to play it a
first.
second time.
But what if it's really Riyadh first? We bend over backward for Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they agreed to price oil in US dollars. That one deal props up the entire US dollar. No petrodollar, no empire, no cheap borrowing. That's the real power move. So while MAGA says freedom, the dollar's tied to oil kings who don't share your values, but control your currency. If your economy needs Saudi permission slips, how free are you, really?
Now I'm going to push this in the middle of this, and there was a statement there. It said 3 things. It said no petrodollar, and bear with me, let me scoot this forward. No petrodollar, no empire. That's the real power move. If there is no petrodollar, then the U.S. empire basically fades away. I'm going to remove this from the desktop and talk to you. Hopefully, you and I We'll talk to each other. We are live today on Rumble. We are live today on Facebook. And we are live on YouTube today. I want to hear from you. Do you understand how many of you have been following this issue with the petrodollar? And if you correct me, if you think I'm off base, that this does have a very important role in the US economy for the foreseeable future. You tell me if you think I'm right, or if you think, Keedy, you've got this one wrong. You are off base on this one. Please do join the conversation. I welcome each and every one of you to participate. Let's keep going forward. And I have much more research to share for today's topic. Next, we're going to go to an article. This article appears from TBS News, and the article is entitled Saudi Arabia's Petrodollar Exit. Saudi Arabia's Petrodollar Exit. And what I'm going to do is, while I'm doing all this, is I am going to pin this article to a couple of places here. Copy. I'm going to paste it up for our YouTube listeners. I hope it all fits. Okay, it does fit there. And let me see if this also fits on one line on Rumble. It does not fit on one line on Rumble. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post it up on two postings on Rumble. You will see the title of the article, and then I will link you to the article. And here's what this next article has to share with us that's relevant to our study. The article is entitled Saudi Arabia's Petrodollar Exit, a Global Finance Paradigm Shift. This from TBS Report, July 12, 2025. Here's what it has to say. The crucial decision to not renew the contract enables Saudi Arabia to sell oil and other goods in multiple currencies, including the Chinese renminbi, euros, yen, and yuan, instead of exclusively in US dollars. Additionally, the potential use of digital currencies like Bitcoin may also be considered. That's what it had to share from that. Now, there is more. I want to share a little bit more on this. There's a lot to this story, a lot of unpacking on this story. And as a consequence of that, I have to post it up in various places. Next, we're going to once again to a little piece of video, short video that I have here. This short video, Joe Rogan is with Jimmy Dore. Joe Rogan is, of course, the most popular webcast in the world today. He's interviewing a short interview. This is a very short piece with Jimmy Dore, who posts a nice podcast. We've been airing it of recent. I like the Jimmy Dore podcast. The Jimmy Dore podcast is right here. Paste. Oops, I don't need to do that. And 1 second before it runs, I'm going to just pause it right now. I'm going to pause it right now and push it up, present, share screen. Let's go to what happened to Libya. This is Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore speaking together. I'm going to put this up on the screen, StreamYard, push it up on the screen, add it to the stage, and I'm also going to push this link up one more place. I'm going to push it up on my Facebook page. Let's go into this conversation.
Terrorists are the United States. Look what we did to Iraq. Look what we did to Libya. Libya, the most successful country in all of Africa. The guy created the eighth wonder of the world with the way how he delivered water and turned deserts into farmland. And everybody had a house and everybody had education and healthcare. And we turned it into a failed state run by terrorists with open slave markets. Who did that? Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did that. And they'll never have to pay a price for that. Barack Obama, the most they'll do is go, nope, that was a mistake.
But why did they get rid of Gaddafi?
Because he was going to start a currency of Africa that was going to compete with the US dollar and the euro. And they can't have that because the way the United States controls the world is because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So that's why they can put sanctions on all these countries. And so what they're doing, which they shouldn't do, they're weaponizing the US dollar. And so like when countries want to trade with each other, they have to go take their currency, change it into US dollars so they can trade. And a lot of it was based on the petrodollar, which, by the way, Saudi Arabia just quit. They didn't renew it. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did hear about that.
So, and all of a sudden, CBS News is starting to do news stories about how Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. All of a sudden, 24 years later, all of a sudden, oh, you know what? Turns out it was some. And they're like, you mean 2 weeks after they decided to not renew the petrodollar? Now CBS News is allowed to talk about that and investigate it, which when I talked about it, got demonetized. But anyway, that's why, because Gaddafi was doing that. He was going to set up a currency for all of Africa, and it was going to be based on, have a gold standard. And so they're like, no, you're not. The world's terrorists are the United States. Look what we did to Iraq. Look what we did to Libya. Libya, the most successful country in all of Africa. The guy created the eighth wonder of the world with the way how he delivered water and turned deserts into farmland. And everybody had a house and everybody had education and healthcare. And we turned it into a failed state run by terrorists with open slave markets. Who did that? Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did that. And they'll never have to pay a price for that. Barack Obama, the most they'll do is go, nope, that was a mistake.
But why did they get rid of Gaddafi?
Because he was going to start a currency of Africa that was going to compete with the US dollar and the euro. And they can't have that because the way the United States controls the world is because the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So that's why they can put sanctions on all these countries. And so what they're doing, which they shouldn't do, they're weaponizing the US dollar. And so like when countries want to trade with each other, they have to go take their currency, change it into US dollars so they can trade. And a lot of it was based on the petrodollar, which, by the way, Saudi Arabia just quit. They didn't renew it. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
So, and all of a sudden, CBS News is starting to do news stories about how Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. All of a sudden, 24 years later, all of a sudden, oh, you know what? Turns out it was some. And they're like, you mean 2 weeks after they decided to not renew the petrodollar? Now CBS News is allowed to talk about that and investigate it, which when I talked about it, got demonetized. But anyway, that's why, because Gaddafi was doing that. He was going to set up a currency for all of Africa, and it was going to be based on, have a gold standard. And so they're like, no, you're not. The world's terrorists are.
All right. I allowed it to replay 2 times, and therefore I think we did a good job of that. Let's continue. There's a lot more research on the table for today's conversation. If you don't mind, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to close out this window. Boom. So I can free up more resources. And here we go. Back into the conversation for today in real time. It is today, the 15th of July, 2025 in the Western calendar. We are here on LIB Radio talking about Saudi Arabia beginning the unthinkable, dropping the petrodollar. This next article is entitled Saudi Arabia Ends 50-Year Petrodollar Deal with US for Multi-Currency Sales. And I'm going to paste this up here for our Facebook family. And Facebook family, there it is for you. Bear with me as I do the best I can to get all of this on one line. You can always, if it doesn't fit on one line, you can always grab it and just search for the article. I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that I do put it all on one line here. That's for our Facebook family, for our Rumble family. Shabaka, I see you in the house today. Shabaka says, greetings, Baba, and my LIB family. I'm glad you do claim this family, Baba, brother Shabaka. We are here with you, for you, and we are here because of you, Shabaka, and other LIB radio supporters. I can be in this seat and deliver this news report every morning. It's been real sketchy, real recently. It's been sketchy. And I'm trying not to let the quality of the broadcast go down, although stuff is happening in the background I may not have control over. We're always going to do our best. So thank you, Shabaka. Thank you for being a part of this family and bringing your A game to it. Again, here's the article I'm pulling out. Saudi Arabia ends 50-year petrodollar deal with the U.S. for multi-currency sales. And this I'm going to post up on Facebook. And here's what it has to say. India Today, Business Desk, New Delhi, June 17, 2024, by Sonu Vivek. The petrodollar deal was originally signed on June 8, 1974, and was a key part of U.S. global economic influence. Saudi Arabia has decided not to renew its 50-year petrodollar deal with the United States, which expired on Sunday, June 9, as per media reports. This agreement, originally signed on June 8, 1974, had been a key part of U.S. global economic influence. The deal set up joint commissions for economic cooperation and Saudi Arabia's military needs. Back then, the American officials hoped it would encourage Saudi Arabia to produce more oil and strengthen economic ties with Arab countries. By choosing not to extend this contract, Saudi Arabia can now sell oil and other goods using different currencies, such as the Chinese renminbi, euros, yen, and yuan, instead of only US dollars. There's also talk of exploring digital currencies like Bitcoin for transactions. This decision marks a significant move away from using currencies. This decision was made a significant move away from the petrodollar system established in 1972, when the US stopped linking its currency directly to gold. It is expected to accelerate the global trend of using currencies other than the US dollar in international trade. Additionally, Saudi Arabia has joined mBridge, a collaborative effort exploring a digital currency platform sharing among central banks and commercial banks. This project, mBridge, aims to facilitate instant cross-border payments and foreign exchange transactions using distributed ledger technology. That's blockchain. Project mBridge began in 2021 and involves several prominent central banks and institutions worldwide. It recently reached the stage of minimum viable product, MVP, inviting private sector firms to propose innovations and use cases to further develop the platform. This move by Saudi Arabia marks the beginning of a major shift in global economic dynamics, though its full implications on international trade and finance remain to be seen. Now, listening to that, reading that got kind of a little scary to me. Because with all of these complicated systems, at a certain point, it's subject to macro control. And not micro control. Micro control to me, the ultimate in micro control would be you and I growing something. I grow yams, you eat yams, we trade, we barter. You build houses, I need a house, we trade, we barter. That is to me the ultimate micro trade. Of course, we are a long, long way away from that. But the further we go away from that to where you build houses for a corporation, the corporation then sells me the house through 8 different levels of brokers and this, everybody. I bought a house in 2007, had to have so many agreements to make this house sale, and everybody got paid on the deal. And I was left with just the mortgage note, which was out of my capacity to do. And I lost the house after 3 years. Is it coming to the point where a house will cost more than $10 million by the end of the decade or so? Within another decade or so? It's getting outrageous here. We did a show recently where we forecasted the economy 100 years in the future. And 100 years in the future, the average cost of a $100,000 home in the United States at an annual interest rate of 4.1% was going to cost $41 million in 100 years to purchase just a minimal house, a $100,000 house today. So we do know the system is going to break. Where it's going to break, what's going to trigger the break, what the break is going to look like, I cannot tell you. But I can say one thing. We together have got to figure this out. We've got to figure it out. I see you in the house. Ed L. Mack is in the house. Greetings to the LIB family. Thank you for Ed and Brother Shabaka, both of you for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button, if you would, please. I know you probably already have. We appreciate you. Let's continue to build together and grow together and solve our problems together. I'm going to go up. I have another document on the table. How and why the petrodollar could end soon. Written by Harshad Shah. He wrote this and posted this up on LinkedIn, January 14, 2024. How and why the petrodollar could end soon. And then he answers the question, what are petrodollars? Here's what he wrote. Petrodollars refer to the revenues generated from the export of crude oil with the distinct feature of being denominated in US dollars. Coined in the mid-1970s, the term gained prominence during a period of surging oil prices that led to substantial trade and current account surpluses for nations heavily involved in oil exports. The prevalence of petrodollars stems from the enduring use of the US dollar as the primary currency in international transactions. The widespread acceptance of the US dollar in global trade is not solely reliant on the willingness of oil exporting countries. Instead, it is rooted in the United States' status as the world's largest economy and the principal importer of goods. Moreover, the US dollar's preeminence is bolstered by the depth and liquidity of its capital markets, underpinned by the rule of law and military strength. Key facets of petrodollars include number one, or A, payment in US dollars. Petrodollars represent US dollars paid to nations engaged in oil exports. B, revenue source for oil exporters. Many members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and other oil exporting nations rely heavily on petrodollars as their primary source of revenue. C, denomination in dollars. Oil exporting countries settle their sales in US dollars due to its widespread use, facilitating the investment of export proceeds. And D, potential alternatives. Some crude oil exporters, particularly those implicated in human rights violations, have hinted at the possibility of accepting payment in currencies other than the US dollar. Now that's interesting. They said particularly those implicated in human rights violations. Well, the United States violates human rights too, quite a bit. And who are you talking about? And are you labeling these countries that choose to deal with other countries and bypass the petrodollar? Are you automatically labeling them as human rights violators? All nations violate human rights. At this particular point, we can say that. All nations. US, China, India, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Angola, all nations violate human rights, all of them. In recent years, the global landscape of crude oil exports has witnessed significant changes. Before the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, global crude oil exports averaged around 70 million barrels per day. By 2023, this figure had surged to 101.7 million barrels per day. The substantial market size, measured by revenue, of the global oil and gas exploration and production industry reached $5.3 trillion in 2023. Considering an average price of $100 per barrel, this robust pace could translate into an annual global petrodollar supply exceeding $2.5 trillion. The dynamics of petrodollars remains integral to the intricate interplay of global energy markets and international finance. $2.5 trillion? That's kind of hard to conceive. Petrodollars, the beginning and end. The beginning. In 1971, Richard Nixon's decision to end the dollar's gold backing led to economic turmoil known as stagflation. With the US faced devalued currency, high unemployment, and soaring living costs, a solution was sought. In 1973, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger secured a deal with Saudi Arabia to exclusively sell oil globally in dollars, boosting demand for the weakening currency. This strategic move allowed US to sustain trade deficits as countries exchanged dollars for oil. OPEC countries further fueled the US economy by reinvesting their dollar profits into American bonds, enabling the US to finance its government and run huge trade deficits without severe financial consequences. Big oil and the petrodollar. Big oil, compromising major oil and gas companies like BP, Chevron, Eni, ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total Energies, wields significant economic power and political influence. As America became a net oil exporter, fueled by practices like hydraulic fracturing, environmental concerns emerged. However, the pivotal role of the US dollar in global trade traces back to a 1970s agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, anchoring oil pricing in US dollars. This arrangement, coupled with the dominance of American oil benchmarks, such as West Texas Intermediate and Brent crude, solidified the US dollar's prominence. The US solidified the US dollar's prominence. The world's growing reliance on oil, particularly in emerging economies like China, has reshaped global dynamics. China's rise, marked by strategic partnerships and initiatives like the Belt and Road, challenges U.S. economic dominance. Recent developments, such as a landmark 50-year agreement with Saudi Arabia, signal a shift away from the U.S. dollar in oil trades. This shift underscores China's increasing influence and represents a significant step toward a global economy less dependent on the United States. The U.S. economic dominance was built on the petrodollar. This is very important. Please listen carefully. Yes, that's prune juice. I'm 4 days away from completing my summer solstice detox fast. I began it with a 6-day water fast, and I'm ending it with a 3-day water and prune juice detox. Now, next part of this extensive article I have been reading from. This is again from India Today. US dollar's economic dominance was built on the petrodollar. The economic dominance of the United States has historically been tied to the petrodollar system. The US dollar's strength as a reserve currency is not only a reflection of the robust US economy, but also stems from the dollar's liquidity, partly due to countries maintaining dollar reserves for oil transactions. This link was established in the early 1970s after President Richard Nixon decoupled the dollar from gold. In 1974, a significant deal between Washington and Riyadh allowed Saudi Arabia to buy U.S. Treasury bills before public auctions in exchange for selling oil exclusively in dollars. This arrangement expanded the dollar's liquidity, and subsequent efforts led by Saudi Arabia influenced other OPEC nations to invoice oil in dollars. The potential shift from the dollar to the yuan in the global oil trade could have profound effects on both China and the US. If the yuan displaces the dollar to a significant extent, countries might need to maintain yuan reserves. This could lead to increased spending on Chinese debt and imports, strengthening China's economy while impacting the US economy. The current disregard for the petrodollar by some nations, particularly highlighted by Saudi Arabia's evolving stance, has geopolitical implications. The emergence of bilateral arrangements and the avoidance of the dollar by major players like China, Russia, and India raise questions about the future of the petrodollar and the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. The recent issuance of substantial treasury bonds by the US, coupled with shifts in buying patterns by major holders like China and Russia, suggests potential pressure on the US dollar. Factors such as inflation and geopolitical events, including the Ukrainian war, are contributing to a re-evaluation of the global order. The evolving dynamics may be steering us toward a multipolar world, challenging the established norms and setting the stage for a reset in the global economic landscape. The unfolding events make for an interesting and challenging period ahead, with uncertainties about the future trajectory of the world order. Excuse me. Next, Petrodollar and the Lost American Century. This is an extensive article. It's very, very good. The world underwent a profound transformation on September 11, 2001, and later on March 19, 2003, with the US-led invasion of Iraq. These events mark pivotal moments that could have shaped America's destiny positively, but seem to have led to a squandering of potential and a shift towards fear, oppression, and economic decline. The 20th century, often termed, quote, the American century, unquote, boasted achievements in stabilizing global affairs and technological advancements. However, the 21st century appears marked by a departure from America's original purpose and promise. The American presence in the world, overshadowed by an authoritarian state, is characterized by pushing its model onto other societies and safeguarding corporate interests through manipulation and intimidation. This aspect of American foreign policy, involving overt and covert military and intelligence actions, remains largely unexplored in public discourse, obscured by government security measures. During the Cold War, force projections were often driven by geopolitical struggles with the Soviet Union. This led to interventions that protected some nations but trampled others. Allies' imperial ventures contributed to American involvement in regions where vital interests were not at stake. The arbitrary post-World War I drawing of Iraq's boundaries and manipulations of nations in the Middle East during the Cold War exemplify this. The current situation reveals ongoing interference in other countries' affairs, such as the overthrow of Iran's democracy in 1953, support for Osama bin Laden, and current involvement in Venezuela. Covert and overt operations over decades have contributed to anti-American sentiments, creating blowback. Operation Iraqi Freedom, characterized by, quote, shock and awe, unquote, led to the destruction of a nation of 24 million people, marked by an expensive and morally compromised chapter. The US's attempt to clean up the aftermath in Iraq seems destined for failure, signaling an entry into a never-ending war and a forfeiture of the moral high ground. The American century's legacy appears at risk of being overshadowed by the consequences of recent choices and actions. And that's a very, very serious situation. I see you in-house, William. He says the U.S. has no answer to BRICS other than tariffs. I think you're right, William. And we have to consider the only other possible alternative to BRICS than tariffs would be violence, military violence. And the U.S. will not survive a war against China and Russia and India and South Africa and Brazil and the 9 BRICS partner states. And there is, of course, other member states, including Egypt, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and I think Saudi Arabia is wavering still, but Saudi Arabia appears to be moving towards partnership in BRICS. This move with the petrodollar, I think, is definitely indicative of that. It's going to be a real tight period moving ahead. There was one more piece of the story I wanted to play, and I want to, let me find it. This is the daily energy market update. This is a little bit earlier. The update: energies are higher as U.S. and Chinese representatives set to resume trade talks today in London. And this is again dated June 9. Steady and stable are the watchwords of the day for the crude market in news, wires, commentaries. And that is, of course, an energy update. Is the end of the petrodollar near? This one written by Hung Tran, appears to be a Vietnamese name. Is the end of the petrodollar near? This appears on Econographics, June 20th, 2024. Editors note this article has been revised to reflect the fact that Saudi Arabia made no announcement on June 13 related to oil traded in US dollars. Well, there is now an announcement that they are leaving that 50-year-old agreement. And this article goes on to explain a little bit deeper about what exactly is the petrodollar commitment by Saudi Arabia to use dollar revenues from oil sales to the U.S. to buy U.S. treasuries. But that history is more complicated. And I don't want to go in this. What I want to do, I don't want to go into the past on this. I want to go into the future on this. So I'm looking for, we read this one. Saudi Arabia ends the petrodollar era. We did another research. This one, Saudi ending the petrodollar agreement was the worst possible result of South Africa joining BRICS. Now it's happened. Are there any economists in here that can explain just how severe of an impact it will have on US dollar and what approximate percentage US will lose in purchasing power, please? This is a person asking this question I just read. They're asking it of Reddit. Saudi ending the petrodollar agreement was the worst possible. Now it's happened. And there are responses, but the responses all seem to be that defending the petrodollar. I'll read just one response, which has a number of points. There's a weird fascination with BRICS here. Not your question in particular, but more generally. This is the person complaining about Reddit. Anyway, the quick points about why this is a nothing burger. Point one, the petrodollar isn't going anywhere. Saudi Arabia is trying to get concessions out of the U.S. as part of the U.S. big push for a grand coalition to address the ongoing crises in Gaza. This agreement will be renewed. This is just signaling. Point two, until the KSA decides to peg oil to another currency, whether or not a formal petrodollar agreement exists is irrelevant. The US dollar's power doesn't disappear because you could theoretically buy oil in yuan now. Point three, the markets have been open for several days since this happened, and there's been no real reaction. SPX is actually up, and the DXY is up marginally, but it's close enough to make no difference. If this was a big crisis, we would have seen a reaction by now. And I think I agree with that point. Point three, Saudi Arabia is looking to diversify away from oil. Vision 2030. So their relative importance can be expected to diminish over time. Additionally, the rise of EV, electric vehicles, and renewables will erode their importance on this subject even further. Good point. Point number five, as far as I can tell, Saudi Arabia still hasn't joined BRICS. They've been given this offer but haven't formally accepted, which goes back to my first point, but that's neither here nor there. And the final point, as a general reminder, BRICS is not a monolithic alliance or whatever. And every time it expands, it adds more conflicting agendas into the mix. Like this recent batch of invites, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, two countries currently engaged in what amounts to a proxy war. And then there is the Egyptian-Ethiopian situation, and of course, India, China. BRICS is not going to be steering the global economy anytime soon. And that was, I think, a well thought out response from Pause for Volatility. And it was again on reddit.com. Let me see if I can put that link up so you can have access to it as well. And I did see a comment come in from William. William is in the house on the Rumble family. He said the U.S. has no, let me get him in. U.S. has no answer to BRICS other than tariffs, tyranny, or revolution is on the plate right now. This American empire is collapsing right now as we watch. We are not going to recognize this country by the end of Trump's term. 7 months in, and look at the chaos. Develop small communities and barter with each other. Know your neighbors, control your communities, and there is a better chance of calm. And I think you are right on good responses. Good responses, brother William. And I'm going to post up another link here to the Reddit article in case anyone wants to read more of that response to the question. Ed L. Mack, I see you in the house. Roughly how much does the U.S. make per year off the petrodollar? That's interesting because it's kind of hard to gauge because much of the petrodollar is used to buy debt, is used to extend U.S. debt. But let me ask you a question. Put it in a search engine. I'm going to ask AI, Chat GPT from Brave to answer your question. I think it's a good question. It's probably a little more complicated than what we might imagine, but I'm going to ask this question. Boom, shakalaka, boom, boom, boom. Roughly how much does the U.S. make per year from the petrodollar? Here's what it has to say. The United States benefits significantly from the petrodollar system, which involves the use of the U.S. dollar in global oil transactions. The exact amount U.S. makes annually from the petrodollar is not explicitly stated in the context, but estimates can be derived from available data. Global oil production averaged about 96 million barrels per day in 2023, generating an annual global petrodollar supply of about $2.98 trillion annually, assuming on average price of $85 per barrel. This figure highlights the substantial economic impact of the petrodollar system on the U.S. economy. Point one, annual global petrodollar supply, approximately 2.98 trillion US dollars, based on 2023 oil production and an average of $85 per barrel. That's $2.98 trillion. Point two, U.S. economic benefits. The petrodollar system supports the U.S. economy by maintaining the dollar's status as a global reserve currency, facilitating U.S. Treasury investments, and reducing borrowing costs for the U.S. government. And point three, petrodollar recycling. Oil exporting countries often reinvest their petrodollars into U.S. Treasury securities, and other dollar denominated assets, further supporting the U.S. economy? That's a good question you asked there, Brother Ed L. Mack. And I copied that, and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste this into today's research notes. And I'm going to begin to wrap it up for today. Let's go to the end and paste this in. And it was a very good question. And let me see, annual supply. Let me get the question in as well. And the question, roughly how much does the U.S. make per year off of the U.S. petrodollar? And U.S. petrodollar revenue, there it is. Good going. We're going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank you all for everything that you do for me. Ubuntu. It's a word we all should know, should use, that binds us together. I exist because of your existence. I am because you are. And without our collaboration and cooperation, we could not exist. But we do exist. We collaborate, we cooperate. I am your servant with this LIB radio. So when you need me, you know where to find me. My text number is 702-580-0662 for your health and fitness consultation. And that's another part of my specialty. We engage in these Pan-African talks. And I met this brother here just a couple of days ago at his store. If you find yourself in Las Vegas, you do want to meet my brother, our brother, who's from Senegal. His name, Mara Diakate. Maro Diakate. And his store is called Africa Love. This brother is awesome. African Love is located in Las Vegas, 3375 South Decatur Road, Suites 2 to 4. And you will not be disappointed. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. He's also got another store in New Orleans. But we're going to have to start to think a whole different way. I want you to call me. If you need anything to deal with your health, improving your health, you call my number. And to the best of my abilities, I will have your back. If you're in Las Vegas, go visit Africa Love. You will not be disappointed. That's Decatur Road at Desert Inn. I think we should become extremely optimistic. I have been very pessimistic of recent. And then several things happened, beginning with our Saturday feast on the 15th. Was it 15th? What was Saturday? Saturday was the 12th. And at that Saturday feast, I met some brothers from Armenia. And we're going to be producing the Living Superfood Chefing Show. And I also met the next day, because of one person who came to our first Saturday feast, which was on the second Saturday this month. I met the next day Brother Mario. and is it Mario? Brother Mara Diakate. And we're going to be doing some wonderful things there. He's going to be building a restaurant. He is building the restaurant right across from where his two main facilities are. He's got a grocery store, a culture store, and a hair salon right all day together. And we missed his fair that he had earlier in the day. But I want to tell you, there is great reason for us to be optimistic. Great reason for us to remain optimistic. Don't let pessimism get you down. If pessimism is getting you down, I'm thinking about reviving my hypnotism practice. Whereas I had studied hypnotism and practiced doing it for a little while. This would have been over 10 years ago. And I was actually quite good at it, believe it or not. So I'm thinking about restarting my hypnotism to bring everybody else along on this magnificent, lovely journey we call life. We call this magnificent journey life. And if you are experiencing that vision of life that has you pessimistic, like I had become pessimistic, then you need to change. I had to change because that pessimism that I was experiencing was only going to kill initiative. And I was very close to quitting LIB Radio. Last week, the week before, I was very close to killing it. The pain is still hurting me right up to this moment. I'm expecting tomorrow morning to wake up and a substantial amount of the immediate pressing pressure and pain will be off of me. But that's just a short-term solution. We can and we must come together for long-term solution. I'm not even going to express what I was about to say because it was pessimistic again, based upon lack of response to initiative for me to essentially do what I do best and make it free. So here we stand, right on this verge of a magnificent future. You can join us. We can join together. We can be free together, or we can be suffering together. I say freedom is preferred. You've been tuned into your LIB Radio, your LIB TV, your livinginblack.com. And I'm going to encourage each and every one of you to get deeper into it. Get much deeper into it. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you. Peace now.